Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues and TWG members. Welcome to the 23rd Technical Working Group on Disaster-Related Statistics. Today, our chair, Miss Aruna Chandabal, she's not available. So this time it's going to be our ESCAP team facilitating, moderating this meeting. And today, before we starting, we actually have an honor to welcome our speaker here in person, Miss Farisha Ali from Maldives. So, yeah. So, before we going into the other part, let's me recap about the last meeting. Actually, last time in late May, we had a review, and we had an honor to hear from Bangladesh and Malaysia to review on the DRSF table on the material impacts, both in physical terms and in monetary terms. And yeah, so this time is going to be a sequel where you will be hearing about the disruption on basic service, but it will come later. Before we go in there, maybe some of you may have heard that after the last meeting, we actually had we organized an expert forum for producer and user of disaster-related statistics. So I would like to invite my colleague Hakan to give a little bit of highlight about the forum for those of you who didn't join. Yeah, and we will share the meeting link to the website and the record of that meeting. Yes, please, Hakan. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon to you all. My name is Hakan Yazıcıoğlu, and maybe some of you may know me. I am associated statistician at ESCAP, and as Miss Paul mentioned, today we will moderate the meeting together. And as Miss Paul said, we had the expert forum in the beginning of the June this year, and we had hosted 70 participants in person from the region and international organizations, and many colleagues in online. In a week of full of events with a hybrid format, we have online and in-person participants in the evening sessions for 3 days, and for in-person participants we have afternoon sessions and associate events to dig into the related statistics that are covered in the context of this related statistics framework, and we aim to share the knowledge and expertise of countries who are producing and using this related statistics for their risk-informed development policies. And also we aim to get some outcomes for the advance of the production of a common global framework for this related statistics, which is the responsibility of the interagency expert group of this-related statistics that is established under the UN Statistical Commission, and this group will submit their first report next year, and will try to establish and develop the common framework for the global statistics in the 2026. So this expert forum also served as an input and for this work globally, and also bring together all the stakeholders, partners from the region and inside the countries, like national disaster management authorities and national statistics offices, or academia and international organizations, to discuss the current progresses and the emerging areas and some challenges in producing and using this kind of statistics globally. So we had a fruitful week of events in the 5 day 5 days in the June, and after that uh, we continue to our work in the region by, as you know, uh, preparing and organizing these technical working groups for this the latest statistics. And today, should I continue, Paul, or?
You can continue. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
okay. So today's meeting is to review the DRSF tables, two tables, table D2A and D2B, which are the disruption of basic services from a disaster by region and hazard types, and the other table is the table F, summary of material impacts to agriculture by hazard types. Now I will share my screen. Uh, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now you see the first table D2B, sorry, and D2A. These are the tables for disruption of basic services from a disaster. In the rows, you see the basic services, and in the columns here, you see the hazard types, and in the second table, you see the regions. Uh, Actually, these tables, disruption of basic services from a disaster, these are presented as an optional extension of the direct impacts, especially to critical infrastructure. In the Sendai framework, disruption to services are consequences of the damage and or destroys uh, infrastructure. The global indicator here in Sendai framework refers to the statistics on numbers of units of critical infrastructure damaged or destroyed. So this table is related with this target D of the Sendai framework, which is substantially reduce the disaster damage to critical infrastructure and disruption of basic services, and among them health and educational facilities, including through developing their resilience by 2030. But apart from this damage to critical infrastructure, national agencies also collect and produce data on number of people affected and length of time by type of disruptions. So to meet the overwhelming needs of the countries and for places where vital systems and uh, basic services were affected. The data collected in table D2 can be helpful for disaster response activities. At this point, it may be helpful for me maybe to clarify what is mean by basic services and disruption. The basic services are defined as the services that are needed for all society to function effectively. For example, the water supply, sanitation, healthcare, education, facility activities. These are the basic services, and they also can include such as critical infrastructure such as electricity, telecommunications, transport, and waste management. These are also basic services. On the other hand, the disruption is defined in the technical guidance of UNDRR on monitoring and reporting of progress in achieving the global targets of the Sendai framework. In this document, the disruption is defined as the interruptions of the services. It can be either single or multiple, or short or long. This is the interruption, or it can be in terms of damage to the facilities or networks that provide the service, or it may be a measurable or noticeable reduction in the quality of the service, or it can be also a reduction in the population covered by the service, or it can be a combination of all these. So these are all called disruption of the basic services. And if during a disaster or a consequence of that disaster, any of the situations I mentioned here, if it happens, it will count one disruption of a service. Also keep in mind that a service can be disrupted once per disaster, or also several services can be disrupted during a disaster. Moreover, there can be cascading disruption of services. For example, interruption of electricity may also cause disruption of health services. So this should also be taken into account in this manner. For example, I can give this example for disruption of basic services. For example, during or after a flood, the water supply may be affected in a province, so water may not be in good quality because of this damage, and it can be maybe rationed for example, 12 hours a day for a few days, a few weeks, or a few months. This means that water service was disrupted by this flood, and we count this as one disruption. On the other hand, for example, imagine a windstorm that hits a city, and because of this disaster, electricity fluctuates in voltage, and it is interrupted several times in different parts of the city that leaves several neighborhoods without power. This means that electricity is disrupted because of this disaster, the windstorm. And also, as electricity disrupted, water supply and communication can also be interrupted in several neighborhoods. So this also means that for this disaster, this windstorm, three services can be disrupted at once: the electricity, communications, and water. So we count three disruptions in this case. So, if you look again to our DRSF tables, we can see that the basic services in this table D2 are health services, educational services, public administration services, transport services, electricity and energy services, water services, ICT services, and other basic services. And under these services, we try to estimate the number of people affected from the disruption of these uh, services, and we try to also count the length of time this caused that the services were disrupted. So and in the second table, we also have an adjustment column to count the number of disruptions by regions, because one disaster can affect more than one region. So if we fill this table, for example, for one disaster that's affecting health services in three regions, so we put for three regions 111 for health services that's disrupted, but as a total, it does not mean three disruptions. Actually, in total, we should have to adjust the multiple counting of the events by region. So we should adjust it by putting a -2 and having an national total for one uh, for one in the table. We have this difference from the previous table. Also, the second table, I would like to give a brief information also on the agriculture uh, table. This is, sorry, I have to rotate it. Yeah. This is the summary of the material impacts to agriculture by hazard types. And this table is developed by FAO based on their methodology for damage and loss assessment in agriculture. It covers a basic range of uh, material impact statistics that are relevant to agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and these are reported by hazard types. As you all know, agriculture sector forces a large of exposure to disasters, and every year there occurs enormous economic loss in the agriculture sector globally due to the disasters. And in this context, this table,
Sorry,
sorry,
could you please enlarge the table a little bit? Sorry.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. And this table, in this sense, collects the data for material impacts to crops, livestock, forestry, aquaculture, and fisheries, both in physical terms and monetary terms by hazard types. You see the under crops, the area affected by crop type, the stored product destroyed, stored inputs destroyed, equipment, machinery destroyed, and discounted yield value of perennial trees until replanting. This is monetary terms, and post-disaster short-run maintenance costs. You see these items. These are actually repeating under different items here, like livestock, forestry, agriculture, and this table can be a bit complex and technical in terms of valuation of the damage and losses in this sector. So I would like to give a brief information on this issue and try to not get you bored in this sense. And actually, the impacts of each subsector of agriculture can be divided into two main components, production and assets. We have production damage, production losses, and asset damage in this table and in the valuation of economic losses and in agriculture sector. Production damage is it is measured in terms of value of destroyed agricultural inputs like seeds, fertilizers, feeds, fodders, and also the outputs, the stored products. You see here, stored products destroyed is production damage. And you see here, stored inputs destroyed is production damage. And here you see the equipment machinery destroyed. This is the assets damage. Is measured in terms of value of the destroyed facilities, machinery, tools, and key infrastructure related to agricultural production. Actually, the monetary of the damaged assets, monetary value of these assets is calculated using the replacement or repair costs. This may be a bit in detail, but I would like to give this info for you also. And also we have production loss. Production loss is also measured in terms of the value of the agricultural production lost from the disaster. Actually, this is here represented by discounted yield value of perennial trees under replating. And we have also the area affected by crop type in terms of area. We also keep this data in the table. And actually, the assessment of production loss should be done for all primary crops. Here, primary crops are those that come directly from the land without having any undergoing any real processing apart from cleaning. This can be also annual or perennial crops, and the valuation of the loss in annual and perennial crops are different. Actually, destruction of annual or seasonal crops can be assessed as a one-time loss, actually, which hopefully can be recovered over time and will not directly affect the next harvest. But the losses of perennial crops relate to expected future returns that would have extended beyond the season in which the disaster happened. So we have to estimate their discounted yield value for the next years. So we have this discounted yield value of perennial trees under crops, or discounted value of livestock products under livestock area, and we have to count these separately. We also under livestock, forests, aquaculture, and forestry and perennial crops. The calculation of monetary indicator in terms of loss and damage is generally the discounted expected yield. So I try to summarize the table. It may be a bit technical and boring in this sense, but maybe understandable a bit for you. And you can also have the more detailed calculation methods in the FAO methodology. And now I would like to give the floor Mr. Farosha Ali Nasir from Maldives to deliver her presentation on the review of the DRSF tables. And I also want to thank her and Maldives to volunteer for this review today. The floor is yours, Ms. Farosha. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakan. So, thank you for giving this opportunity to Maldives. We are very grateful to be here. Just to begin with the before the review of these tables, I wanted to actually introduce a little bit of Maldives to you guys, so that you have a little bit of idea how we struggle with the data. Like, the struggle is real. So, just a quick introduction about Maldives. So, of course, the contents, I'll just leave it there. So, for those who might not understand where Maldives is, you see Maldives inside that red box. So all you see is water all around. There are big countries up and down, but those little dots hardly comes into the world map. So basically, our Maldivian islands are like this. So all these islands, except for the one in the middle, are residential islands. So people are living in all these islands, as you see. So you can see already how vulnerable those islands are, even though it's very soothing to see to our eyes. Going forward with Maldives, we have an average elevation of about 1.5 meters, so our lands are very flat. And the largest island is only 5 kilometers in length. So when we talk about crop damages in square kilometers, you would have an idea how difficult it would be for us. So also 93% of these islands are actually facing beach erosions. Additionally, our community is widespread into these small, tiny islands with high economic dependence on tourism. And 1/3 of our population is in our capital city, Male. You see the picture of Male city just below. It's we call it is a concrete jungle where you see buildings all over. So that's a snapshot of Male city, where 1/3 of our population resides in. So looking at the population distribution, the latest census shared by our NBS office, Shazoo. Our total population is around 500,000 with foreigners 132,000, and our Maldivian residential population is 382,000. So 26% of our population are foreigners. So as per the statistics, kindly also note that there might be undocumented migrants which are not counted in census. So our statistics shows that there are one foreigner for every 3 Maldivian. So again, it's additional data that we have to look into in terms of vulnerability. So also, if we see into the population distribution among islands, there are only 2 islands with a population between 5,000 to 9,000. And there are only 3 islands with a population of more than 10,000. All other islands are less than either 1,000 or 500, or there are 40 islands with the residential population less than 500. So all these 300 or 500,000 populations distributed in 187 islands, it's quite challenging for us, especially in terms of data. So looking at the hazard and vulnerability indicators, the main hazard or vulnerability that we have is the low-lying islands we have. As you see those high-rise building, colorful buildings, it is said to be one of the highest land elevation of 2 meters above sea level, which is a reclaimed island. It's not a natural island. So it's a reclaimed island in one of the areas we call it Hurumale. So it's phase 2 basically. So this geographical dispersion of islands is making it very hard for us, and also the high economic dependency on tourism, where the first sector to be hit hard during a disaster is very much challenging for us. And also, of course, whatever we are dependent on, like even for the staple foods, it's all import. It's not, we do not have enough crops for the whole country in Maldives, so it's all about import. So even if there is a disaster in a nearby country, it could actually affect us very hard. And for the natural hazards, we have tropical cyclones, just like any other country, especially in the seas. We have thunderstorms, tornadoes. Our Met colleagues call them funnel clouds, not the big tornadoes as it is, but the funnel clouds. We often face surges, strong winds. Strong winds for us might be a little bit different for all other countries, like even 60 km/h is very much strong for us, considered the poor housing condition we might have. And of course, earthquake and tsunami, it is very rare in Maldives, but once a tsunami hits, we will have to start from zero again. And also we have drought. I know it's sometimes a little bit funny for other countries when we say drought, despite of having water all around our country, but of course we depend on rainwater for drinking. So all our countries, all among the local communities, the main source of drinking water is rainwater. So once there is prolonged dry season, especially because of climate change, we run out of drinking water. So we have to supply emergency water to the island. So it's also kind of a unique hazard for Maldives. And just going through the National Disaster Management Authority, why I wanted to show this slide is because how new we are in the field compared to most of the bigger countries. So we were introduced only after 2004 tsunami with the sole mandate of setting back recoveries after tsunami. So from 2004 to 2015, it was all about tsunami recovery. There were not much preparedness works ongoing. We really started our preparedness work after 2015. So we are still quite new on the field, but I take pride in the work that we do and where we have come in this short period of time. And from 2018, we established our law. Actually, we were able to pass a law on disaster management, and we started our works towards a resilient Maldives. With our vision, we have a resilient Maldives vision someday, and our mission is to save lives and protect livelihood. So the decision-making process is as such. We have a 3-tier kind of decision-making in disaster management, where All the decisions are being taken by the Disaster Management Council, which is chaired by our president, which is followed by a Disaster Management Steering Committee, where all the technical guidance is given to the committee regarding any kind of disasters. And then we have Disaster Management Authority basically implementing all the decisions taken in Disaster Management Council. And then we have the response forces for the first responding purpose. And also for response coordination, we have a very much decentralized system. From national level, we separately have atoll level, and we also have island level councils. So all the disaster management efforts in Maldives are currently very much decentralized, and we are trying to strengthen decentralization in terms of disaster risk reduction and preparedness as well. And just briefly what we do, just any other NDMO, we do the policies, we do risk assessments, planning, we do the coordination of response, we provide humanitarian assistance, we provide disaster relief, and also we do a community-based disaster risk management programs. As you can see from the from some of the pictures, all our works are very much community-based so that we could maintain or sustain those programs. And also we do the strengthening of response capacity of our response forces. We try to provide them with resources they require, or including the training and awareness sessions to the police, to the MNDF. We are police, and our defense forces is considered to be the first responders in country. So we will try to bring them in on board for disaster risk management as well. And also we have all kind of resort resilience programs, school preparedness program, and all other sectoral programs as well. So looking at the current status of disaster data governance, coming to here, now you have kind of a picture of how Maldives is. So data usually collected are focused on damages rather than loss. And most of the reports that come to us is for the purpose of aid. So not all the information we need are reported to NDMA. So we have limitation in disaggregated data. We do not really do evaluation of disaster losses, especially the D2 and F is the most challenging area, agriculture and critical infrastructure, including basic services. Currently, we have two methods that we take risk data. One is the HVCA, the Hazard, Vulnerability and Capacity Assessment, where we collect risk information, and all the damages and impacts that we collected are through manual forms. Of course, we recently completed a UNDRR supported data enhancement project, which I will give a little bit of insight about it. So this maturity assessment is very much interesting for us, where we actually understood where we are at, in terms of data. So we understood from this maturity assessment that we are not actually too bad in terms of data. We are able to collect 32 variables of SFDRR, which we were not aware of. So we were collecting it. And also the issue here is the data that is collected are very much centralized and done by NDMA. So basically whenever it's data, it is NDMA, even though we have Bureau of Statistics doing everything that is related to data. So we understood that there is a huge gap in terms of disaster related data. So of course, we have insufficient data to estimate the SFDRR indicators. Also, the data, the main data management system we use is the Disinventor by UN. So because we get very limited data, the data entered is also very minimal. So we also understood through this maturity assessment that these indicators or the variables are which are not collected by NDMA is actually covered by a lot of other agencies. So there are data in other agencies which we are not aware of. And also these loss and damages are not quantified by any stakeholder. So they have just collected it, raw data, just keep it somewhere, and it is not quantified in any way. And based on this maturity assessment, the first thing we did was we actually used this kind of case registry. So it's very minimal information on that we collected. But after this maturity assessment, we changed our system of collecting. So more disaggregated data. So I know you can't see it clearly, but we have initially we just collect the information of adults, male, female, that's it. There may be children, male, female, that's it. But now we are collecting the affected population, IDPs, deaths, injuries, locals, disaggregated into locals, as well as foreigners, male, female. So likewise, we have done a lot of disaggregation after this. So we are currently moving our case registry to the one in the green color. So we are improving that as well. The other two main thing we understood was about the current coordination environment of data. So there was an assessment that was done, and we understood that there's only very limited formal relationships with multi-sectors. Of course, we have personal relationships with all these agencies, but we do not really have a good formal relationship with the data. I mean, with the agencies in terms of data sharing. And also most institutions actually do not share data on a continuous basis. When someone asks for data, they just send a whole PDF in their own format with whatever they have. So it's not done in a continuous basis. And also they highlight on some of the challenges, like all these are happening because there's no national framework that they are aware of when it comes to disaster data. There's no online portal to share data, and there are no standardized protocols or templates to share data. And also who to share what is not defined in anywhere. And also communication and training is required. So we took all this very positively, and we began with starting an online portal, which we are currently developing on. So this portal is very much based on the information that is being shared with the stakeholders. So we are going to have a specific template, for a same template for all the organizations to share data online on an online basis. So we are hoping that things will get better in the future with this new online portal. So just reflecting on the our takeaways, the most important thing was about defining terminologies. So there were differences in terminologies among sectors, which we need to do it. Standardizing an agreed template for data collection, which we are currently doing it, and also having a single data management system, which is web-based, which again we are trying to establish. And also what we need to more is advocating and raising awareness, not only at local level, but also policy level, local sectors, and also other public agencies. And the most important thing to highlight is we need to do more advocating, more awareness that data is not only for aid purpose. It's not just for the reporting purpose, but also we need to use this data for impact-based forecasting and other decision making as well. So looking at the DRS table D2 and F, there is very minimal for us to say. We tried to do a real review of these tables with the agencies, and then this is what actually came up with. I apologize that I could not provide any number as of now because it's very new for us as well. So looking at the D2 table, so we understood there are services that is highlighted like health services, education, public administration, transport, electricity, water, and then comes a whole line with other basic services. So what we consider as basic services are already up there. So what other basic services could there be? That is something we need to discuss and figure out. And in terms of data availability, data is actually available somewhere, somewhat. So when it comes to health services, those data are partially available. I'm saying partially because those damages are actually collected on case basis for the sole purpose of repairing it. So it's not maintained in any systematic way. So these information are somewhat stored in Ministry of Health and other health facilities. Education data is available. Ministry of Education have it, but they do not share it with stakeholders because we never ask them to. And in terms of public administration, we were looking at what are the specific areas that we can cover under public administration. We might need a little bit of more guidance on this area because we had a little bit of difficulties in understanding what this public administration could really mean. And then, of course, just like as I said, for us, public administration is transport, electric, energy, all those are in this table. So what is the other public administration? In terms of transport, we could not really reach out the colleagues. So the little knowledge we have is that there is no collected data maintained on terms of transport. But of course, there is a transport ministry, so there might be at some level, but we could not find anything as of now. And when it comes to electricity, energy, and water, data are available in Malay City. So it is somewhat safe to say that the data of one third of population could be in this STELCO and MWSC, meaning it's state-owned companies who are taking in charge of providing electricity and water. So for Malay, they do have this data, but it is not shared. We have no idea of the services, but we know whenever there is a disruption, they have it recorded in their systems. So it is there. But when it comes to local islands, the 187 islands, the other 187 islands, those data are not maintained. But yes, there is a utility regulatory authority, the URA, and they did kind of discuss with us that it's their mandate to maintain this data, which they're also kind of new and they have started recently. So they are very willing to take this up and go on. And also they were interested when I discussed this table with them, why is not sewerage anywhere can be seen. So for Maldives, it is something, sewerage and waste is something very important. So can it be a water, sewerage and waste, or should it come under other basic services, which we are not sure of, but it's the same organization or same agency that is doing the work. So we really believe that there should be separate columns or lines for sewerage and waste as well. And the other thing we noticed is that there is length of time in all the rows that comes. So what is this length of time? So if the electricity is disrupted, for how long are we considered is it as an impact? Maybe it could be 2 seconds, it could be 3 seconds, but is it really an impact? So we are not sure of that. So there we need some criteria, maybe strengthening some existing guidelines or something that we need to figure out how we are going to assess this. That is one. And then we, as I said earlier, we need to have nationally agreed explanation. Basic services for me and for others might differ. So we need to have for some, I remember in one of the meeting that I was in with some of the local people, for them, air conditioner is a basic need. For them, mobile phone is basic. So what are we talking about? So we need to have an agreed basic services among all the agencies for us to review this DRSF tables. And from D to B, I noticed that there is some region. So I was wondering about the regions, what this region could be. Can it be atolls? In that case, there will be like 20 columns that comes in. If it is island, it's going to be 187 columns that is coming in. So it's going to be very much, it could be again be a very big data kind of thingy if we are talking about regions. So how are we going to divide it into the regions? So that is also something I think we will need to figure out when it comes to Maldives. Just because of the unique geography that we have, everything needs to be adapted and changed as per our requirement when it comes to this kind of international documents. And looking at the table F, which is whenever we are talking about data, we say agriculture is something that we are very much lagging behind on. So when it comes to crops, yes, there are data available, but it is partially available in agriculture, in NDMA. There is one government entity called AgroNational where they do have some data. Councils have some data, but these data are very much ad hoc. It's not disaggregated by type of crop or anything. It's just that some person's agriculture or farm got damaged during this weather. That's it. So we don't know what is being grown there even. So it's very challenging for us to evaluate these damages or quantify those damages when we don't know what is being grown in there. And the other thing is it depends on which season, what crop is being grown. It keeps on changing. It's not regularly monitored, so we have a lot of challenges when it comes to even getting baseline data when it comes to agriculture. And of course, we could not figure out any data on equipment and machinery, so we don't really know what is being used for agricultural purpose. So it's very challenging. When it comes to livestock, we believe that it's very limited or it's not available. So Ministry of Fisheries and Agriculture, that's with caps lock, might have the info, but it's not shared. So we really do not know the situation of livestock, which we need to work on. In terms of forestry, we do not have, as per the definition forestry, we have very small, jungle kind of things, but it's not really forestry. So it's not really been maintained or anything. Aquaculture, we really have no idea about aquaculture. I tried talking some of the colleagues to understand, because we know that there is a marine research center, but they might have some data, and I understood, yeah, this is something. By seeing this table, I understood that we need to also work with the Marine Research Center to understand the status of aquaculture. So yes, thank you for you guys introducing us with this table so that I can look into this. And in terms of fisheries, the data is very much limited. Again, livestock and fisheries comes under Ministry of Fisheries and Agriculture. So we need to have a better coordination and among NDMA and our ministry for us to get this data. Just briefly, I wanted to show you this map because I wanted to let the others know that from the maturity assessment, the information that we were talking about in these DRSF tables are actually covered somewhere. If we see to the blue colored lines, I know you cannot read it, but those lines with blue color, they actually have data of victims, mortality, damage, and loss. So if we look into that circle, there are a lot of organizations actually collecting some data on that, but NDMA does not have that data, and I believe National Bureau of Statistics does not have that data as well. So likewise, there are a lot of agencies which actually collect this data. And if we go just skimming through this table, I highlighted this green because if you see in the middle column, the contribution to Sendai indicators. So we are talking about the DRSF tables. When I see it, it was about DC, if I remember, SFTRR indicators. So if we go through these tables, the highlighted ones, these agencies actually collect this indicator data, which we do not have. But as I skimmed through, you could see only 2 lines in green. So which means that there are only 2 agencies that we could see where the F table data is being collected. So you could imagine how limited that data can be. So there is a need of improvement. But for the D2 table A and B, these blue colored agencies actually they have incident type, location, household, even vehicle, time, deaths, everything is there, which needs a better compilation of these information. So I think it's safe to say improving coordination and data sharing at this point is the solution for comprehensive data management in Maldives as of now. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I would be very happy to answer.
Thank you, Farosha, for the informative and comprehensive presentation. Actually, when you show the distribution of population among several islands, actually it became crystal clear for me to understand that Maldives have a unique and a difficult geography with lots of islands on people living, and it's not actually hard to understand that providing basic services is even hard in peacetime. We cannot maybe think of the situation during a disaster or after a disaster for you to provide the aid for response and recovery activities. Also, what I understand from your presentation is that as every country, Maldives also have some disaster data, but it is scattered among various stakeholders in the country. And there is a need for the establishment of a single data management system that can allow you to collect data through maybe standardized agreed templates, and also increase the usage of the common terminology, definitions and concepts among sectors and among the institutions. And also we see that the collaboration and cooperation should be increased among institutions in the country to effectively collect the data on disasters for better risk-informed policies. And I actually also appreciate the mapping of this data ecosystem with possible data sources in the country due to these two tables. And also we see that there is less data for agriculture when we compare with data on disruption of basic services in Maldives. So as you also highlight, this should be improved in the country. And you also raised some questions, as I see, in the um, disruption of basic services in the for table D2. You mentioned about the length of time, and yes, uh, I am on the same page with you. Countries, nation, put a criteria for this length of time of disruption of services, because also in identification of the disruption of basic services, because for example, this electric cut can be occurred in a few houses in a neighborhood, or it can be occur in all the houses in a city, or all the houses in a neighborhood, or all the houses in all the city. So in which circumstance should we identify this as a disruption of the electric cut or basic service? So is it for just a few houses, or just for when it occurs in neighborhood, or all the city, or all the country? And also it's also important to identify if we should uh, uh, put a criteria for the disruption of the length of time of the services, if it should be an hour or more, or a minute, which can be also effective in the disruption of the critical infrastructures. And for the definition of basic services, actually the DRSF refers to the definitions in the technical guidance of UNDRR's Sendai framework. And at this technical guidance, it says that actually the disruption, interruption, and or lower quality of basic services can be measured for the public services such as educational facilities. For example, when the disaster affects the play schools, kindergartens, primary, secondary, or middle schools, or colleges, universities. There's a list of such educational facilities, healthcare facilities, or electricity, energy systems, or other basic services also. Also, the table is actually can be enlarged due to the needs of the country, such as you can also collect data on solid waste management or sewage systems, or also as it is in the table, like water supplies. These are all different, and it's actually referring to the Isaac or NACE codes. For example, for water supplies, it refers to the Isaac 36 or NACE 36, or for sewerage is the uh, activities under NACE 37 or Isaac 37. So I think the countries who wants more information on this coverage of the basic services can look at the technical guidance for more information. But the thing which may not be clear under this basic services, for me it was also the administrative services of the government, because government produces all the basic services generally, also the private sector. But what can be the meaning of the administrative services? I actually also made a search, and for example, these are the services generally, the management, the operation, inspection, and support services for all. For example, if it's education, for all school types and for all educational institutions. And this also includes the public information services concerning the educational system in general, uh, provided by the government offices. We can think about, I think, the services which are given in the, for example, Ministry of Education. If there's a damage and there's a disruption of providing a service by the ministry itself, ministry in administrative terms, I think that we can count on this as a disruption of services. But for the disruption in education in schools is under education services line. I think we could fill in the table. And I think what was the last point? Yes, the regions. You asked if you could, or if any country can report or monitor the effects of the disasters by regions or atolls or islands. Actually, it's based on the need of the country. It's up to you how you can collect the data, how you want to monitor the policy, or how you want to conduct the response activity, or and if it is the atolls are important for you to for in the future making better policies for the disaster management. So it can be atolls, it can be islands. It's not mandatory to just keep like regions. It can be also cities. It can be also states for another country. So we are flexible in these tables. You can add any item, any basic service, or any data that you need internally in the country in the table, or you can reduce if you don't need, if it's not relevant for your country, the items in the table. That's your flexibility in collecting these data. Uh, Actually, from my side, is all. And again, I would like to ask our floor if they have any questions for Farosha or for us to explain maybe in detail, or for your curiosity. We can answer happily. Thank you. I think we have a great silence from the floor. That generally means that everything is understood clearly. And if we don't have any question for this very valuable presentation, we can maybe by reminding you the next TWG meeting on the review of the two tables, the risk reduction expenditure table and also the environmental impacts tables, the G1 and G2, in the next meetings. So we will try to contact with the possible countries that haven't reviewed so far in these meetings. So we will maybe you will be the next. So thank you for participating today. Paul, would you like to add anything or comment or remind us for any other issues?
Not at this point, you've covered everything. Thank you, Hata.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today. Have a nice day and week to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.